Om Tyageshwaram Ramakrishna Sharadam Matrurupinim Vivekanandam Acharyam Natva Vakshami Shuddhaya. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunuktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In our last class we discussed the result of this knowledge of this self. Atma Jnana Phalam. We are towards the end of this Upanishad. Another only some 3 mantras remain. So that we saw Yada Sarve Pramuchante Kama Yasya Hridishrita. That realization of our own real nature, it will destroy, uproot all the desires of the heart. Athamartyo mruto hoti. Then the mortal becomes immortal. Who was a mortal before realization becomes immortal. And atra brahma samashnate, he or she will attain to Brahman here itself, that is while living in this body itself. No going and coming. The points to note were that desires belong to the heart, that is the antahkarana or the mind. Desires are not intrinsic part or attribute of the self. They do not belong to us, they belong to the mind. We identify ourselves with the mind and then say, I have this desire, I have that desire, like that. But desires in themselves belong to the mind, not to the self. Second point is, a person who realizes God, self, the Atman, becomes one with it, and there is no more going and coming for that jiva, for that soul. No going to this loka, that loka, or being born in human world again. None of that. Natasya prana utkramanti. His vital forces do not depart. So that is the result. But these desires are very hard to get rid of. In Sushupti also, in deep sleep, we don't have desires. That is not a state of liberation. That is why the next mantra says, Yada sarve prabhidyante hridayasya granthaya athamartyo mruta bhoti. So this is the reason. The realization of our own real nature will destroy this hridaya granthis, the knots of the heart. Knot, the word uses granthi, knot. Knot is something we tie to put together many things. More than one thing we want to put together, we knot and we tie. We tie with a knot. So in our own understanding about ourselves, if we study our understanding about ourselves, we will find that we have tied many things together. In our own understanding about ourselves, we have tied many things together with a knot, or with many knots, so to say. We experience ourselves to be conscious. At the same time, we experience ourselves to be this body. This body is jada, unconscious. So this conscious and unconscious, chit and jada, both we have tied together, so to say, with a knot in our own heart. So this tying together and granthi, these are in our own understanding of ourselves. This chit jada granthi is there. This tying together of consciousness or conscious and unconscious, the self and non-self, atma and anatma, the self and the mind, body, intellect, ego, everything, and then even the objects of the outside world. This belongs to me and all that. So this granthi or granthis, many knots we have. So one Bhashyakara calls it avidya pratyaha, the erroneous cognitions or cognitions arising out of ignorance. I am this body, I am short, tall, dark, whatever. These are all various granthis. These are destroyed by knowledge. Prabhidyante hridayasya granthaya. When these are destroyed, the desires, also hatred, fears, and the actions, all these, which so to say are sheltered under this ignorance or under this adhyasa, under this granthi, they also are destroyed. So the only way to completely get rid of desires is destruction of ignorance, which happens by knowledge. This tying together of Atma and Anatma is because of ignorance. So, ignorance is the basic cause. We don't know about ourselves, we don't know exactly our real nature. So, we take something else to be ourselves. And that is where this tying together happens of the self with the non self. So, ignorance is the main cause that leads to superimposition, then desire, and all that. So, when knowledge destroys ignorance, the superimposition is destroyed, the desires and everything is destroyed. Then the mortal becomes immortal. Immortal means the mrityu in the form of avidya, kama, karma, ignorance, desires, and actions. That is what is called mrityu. Mrityu is not death of the body. Mrityu is this ignorance, desires, action. This is mrityu. So that one crosses over. And etavadhi anushasam. This is the teaching. This is the end of the teaching, so to say. So the teaching of the Upanishad ends here. And it tells, know your real nature, know yourself. By that knowledge, ignorance will be destroyed, desires will be destroyed. You will cross over the mrityu and will become one with Brahman. And then there is no more going and coming for that jiva. So that is the teaching of the Upanishads. The final teaching of the Upanishad, etavadhi anushasam. There is nothing more to be told. Realize yourself, destroy the ignorance, go beyond death, become one with Brahman, amrutatvam, attain immortality, and no more birth and death. This is the final teaching. And then next three mantras, as we discussed last time also, the first of those three mantras is kind of an appendix, certain tying up of one topic which is left or which crops up as a result of this mantra. So this mantra tells that for a person who has realized the self, there is no more going and coming. What about the others? What happens to others? So like there are people who have been trying to realize the self but fall short and are unable to realize self in this very life. What happens to them? Then Nachiketa had asked second boon, Agni Vidya, which means to attain to Brahmaloka. What happens to them? Then there are devotees who want to go to Brahmaloka, they want to go to Shivaloka, Vishnuloka, whatever loka. What about them? And then there are ordinary people. Some of them are very virtuous. They want to go to Swargaloka, Suryaloka, Gandharvaloka. They perform yagnyas, acquire meritorious people. But they have desires to go to all these lokas. And then there are others who are fit to be born again in this world, in various bodies. So what about this whole gamut of people? What about them? A person who realizes self, okay, no going and coming. What about others? So that's what the next mantra tells. Shatam chaika hridayasya nadyas tasam murdhanam abhinasritaika tayor dhvamayan amritatvameti vishwanganya utkarmane bhavanti. That is the mantra. Now it is told in this mantra we have to accept with faith in the Upanishad because this is an atindriya matter, beyond the sense, beyond perception of senses. Yogis can perceive it. This mantra tells there are 101 nadis. The Upanishad uses the word nadya, it's a plural for nadi. Roughly it can be translated as nerves. But these cannot be seen by any instrument. We can call them as channels. There are 101 channels originating from the heart. These are channels for the flow of life force. Channels for the flow of life force. Mainly used when the soul departs the body. Ignorant one who has failed to realize his or her real nature, who is not an Atmagnya. Such a person, however virtuous that person may be fit to attain Brahmaloka. Such a person also has to depart this body. So that soul also has to depart this body, and for that, one of these channels is used. All these channels, they are meant for going to different destinations. Each channel is meant for a different destination. That is the purpose of these channels. So it says Tasam Murdhanam Abhinasrateka. There are 101 of such channels originating from the heart, Shatam Chayaka, and Tasam Murdhanam Abhinasrateka. One channel is there which pierces through the top of the head. There is one channel. And then we understand that other 100 channels will be going to different parts of the body. Upanishad doesn't tell that. It tells only about one channel. It says one channel originating from the heart pierces through the top of the head. Now the person or jiva which takes to this one channel, Taya Urdhamayan Amritatvameti. Person or the jiva who is fit for Brahmaloka Prapti, the highest aspirant, most virtuous of aspirants, will take to this one channel which originates from the heart and pierces through the top of the head and attain to Brahmaloka. Vishwanganya Utkarmane Bhavanti. And other jivas who are fit to go to Swargaloka or Gandharva Loka or to this world itself or any other Loka, whatever, they will take to all these other 100 channels. One of those that jiva will take and depart from this body to its next destination. That is what this mantra tells. So it's kind of an appendix. But Bhashyakara says this is also a eulogy. This is also an eulogy. Eulogy of the knowledge of the self. If you don't want to get into this business of going and coming, okay, apart from Brahmaloka, if you don't want to get into this business of going and coming, realize the self. Then there is no more going and coming. To eulogize that knowledge of the self, this mantra is told by the Shruti. That however virtuous you may be, you will have to take to one of these paths if you do not realize the self. So strive and realize the self while living in this body itself. That is the eulogy, so to say. The next mantra is summation of the entire meaning of or the purport of the Upanishad, the teaching of the Upanishad. Not only of this Upanishad, but of all the Upanishads, so to say. Angushtamatra Purushontratma Sada Jananam Hridaye Sannivishtaha Tam Swat Sharirat Pravrhen Munjadiveshikam Dhairyena Tadvidyam Shukram Amritam Iti. I said this is the summation of the entire Upanishad. It says that the self is residing in the hearts of all beings. Here the heart means antahkarana. Angushtamatra Purushontratma Sada Jananam Hridaya Sannivishta is ever present in the hearts of all beings. Why is heart said to be the seat of the self? The self is manifest most in the heart as the consciousness, as awareness. And also the realization of the self happens in the heart alone. That is why it's heart or antahkarana. Heart is the seat of antahkarana, you can say, and antahkarana is the seat of the self, or heart is the seat of the self. That is why it is called the seat of the self. Sada Jananam Hridaya Sannivishta. So the self is in the hearts of all. It is there. Tam Svat Sharirat Pravrhen. But as we discussed earlier, we understand ourselves as conscious and unconscious entities together. So we have mixed the self and non-self in our understanding about ourselves. So it says Tam Svat Sharirat Pravrhen, that has to be separated. The truth of ourselves, the truth about ourselves has to be separated from the untruth. This body, the pranas, the mind, the buddhi, the ahankara, all these, so to say, they have covered the self. And we have to segregate the self. Prathak karyat. We have to segregate the self from all these by removing all these. And Upanishad gives a hint, so to say, how it is to be done. Munjyate vaishikam dhairyena. It gives a simile, so to say. There is a grass called munja grass. It has a very fine stalk at the center, and that is covered by leaves. So it is covered by leaves, so it is not seen immediately. So also the self that resides within our own understanding of ourselves, within our own personality, is not seen so immediately. Then if you want to take that stalk out from that grass, you have to slowly remove leaf after leaf. And it has to be done dhairyena. Dhairyena. Slowly you have to remove the leaves and pull out the stalk. That stalk is very delicate. If we hurry, it will break. And when Swamiji says, if you are careless, that stalk has an edge also, that will hurt your hand also. So also, the self that is there within us is to be segregated from the non-self. Dhairyena. With great patience. This word dhairya has 2-3 connotations. One is with great patience, dhairya. Second, dhi also means intelligence. One has to use one's intelligence in doing that. And that intelligence is not worldly intelligence. The intelligence which is coupled with Shraddha. Shraddha in the teachings of the scriptures, Guru, that Shraddhanvita Buddhi. By that, one has to segregate the self. And Bhagavan Bhashyakara says, apramada. By avoiding every kind of advertence, so to say, inadvertence, whatever, pramada, carelessness, by being extremely careful. One has to be apramatta, pramada-rahita, free from carelessness. So these 3 qualities are required. One, intelligence acquired coupled with Shraddha, patience and carefulness, absence of carelessness. With that, we have to segregate our own real nature, our own self, Chit Swarupa, from all that is Jada, from all that is non-self. And then, Tam Vidyat Shukram Amritam. That is to be known, realized as not different from that pure, immortal Brahman. So the self that is within us is to be first segregated. And then it is to be realized, to be known as one with the Supreme Brahman, which is immortal, Amrita, and Shukra, which is pure. This is the gist of the teachings of all the Upanishads. We hear the Mahavakyas, Aham Brahmasmi Tattvamasi. This is what it is. Segregate your own real nature and then know it, realize it to be one with the Supreme Brahman, which is pure, which is Amrita, immortal. So that is the teaching of this Upanishad, which is summarized by the Upanishad itself in this mantra. And the last mantra is kind of a Falashruti. We hear any stotra we read, then it will be Falashruti. So this also the Akhyayika, the story that had begun at the beginning of the Upanishad, that has to be concluded. So by conclusion of this Akhyayika, of that story, the Upanishadic knowledge is praised. Mrityu proktam nachiketo thalabdva vidyametam yoga vidhim cha kritsnam brahma prapto virijo bhut vimrityaranyopyavam yo vidadhyatmameva. So Nachiketa, the ideal student, endowed with discrimination, renunciation, great yearning for realization of the self, such Nachiketa, Vidyam and Yoga Vidhim Labdhva, he received this Brahma Vidya and Yoga Vidhi, that is the means of attaining or means to get to the fruition of this Brahma Vidya. He received it, that's only knowledge, intellectual information, then it has to be pursued. How to pursue? The means of realizing, safala, with the results. So the knowledge means to realize it and the results. Vidya, Yoga, Vidhi, both. Vidya is knowledge. Yoga Vidya is the means to realize it. And who told this to him? Mrityu Proktam. No better teacher than the Lord of Death, Yamadharmaraya. So this Brahma Vidya Yoga Vidhi, which was told by Yamadharmaraya, Nachiketa received it. Labdva. What happened to him? Brahma Prapto Virajo Bhut Vimrutyuhu. He first became Viraja. Viraja means free from all raja, free from all impurity. So he became pure. He became Viraja. Virajaha Abhut. Vimrityu, crossed over death, death in the form of ignorance, desires and karma. And Brahma Praptaha, he attained to Brahman. So this knowledge, it will free us from all impurities, take us beyond death and make us one with Brahman. Nachiketa received that knowledge. He became pure, crossed over death and became one with Brahman. The ideal student, the ideal teacher. There cannot be a teacher more ideal than the god of death. So that is what happened to Nachiketa. And then Upanishad says, Anyopyavam yovidadhyatmameva. It is not that only Nachiketa became Brahma, attained to Brahman. Anyapi. Anyone else also. Anyone else like us. Anyone else who approaches a guru with Shraddha, receives this knowledge, pursues it, and knows his or her own self to be one with Brahman. Evam prakarena, as it is told, Ukta prakarena, as it is told in this Upanishad and in all the Upanishads. Pratyak avinna Brahma. Brahman is non-different from our own self. So anyone who approaches a guru, competent guru with faith, receives the knowledge, pursues it, and attains to that knowledge of the self as one with Brahman, that person will also become Viraja, Vimrityu, and will attain to Brahman. So this is kind of encouragement to us that it is not only Nachiketa, everyone, anyone who is endowed with the same spirit of Nachiketa, that seeking for truth and has discrimination and renunciation, the willing to pay the price, so to say. Renunciation is willing to pay is paying the price. So anyone who has that will also become like Nachiketa, will be freed from all impurity, will cross over death and will attain to Brahman, will become one with Brahman. And then such a person has no more death or being born again and all that. The samsara chakra ends for that person. So this is how this Upanishad ends. This Upanishad was very dear to Swamiji. Anyways, all right. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.